Hey folks, Matt Sharp here with another Pacific Angler Friday Fishing Report. We're filming for the 17th of February, so if it's nowhere near the middle of February, click up here. This is a link to all the Friday Fishing Reports. We do it most weeks, so I should have something more up to date for you. We might be getting a marked selective fishery. But there's some stuff we're going to have to do. There's a couple petitions, there's a couple surveys that we'd like you guys and girls to take to support that. What's a marked selective fishery? It's where we can retain hatchery fish in waters that have no stocks of concern. Something that we've been begging for the last 3 or 4 years because it makes absolutely no sense when it comes to conserving whales, when it comes to conserving stocks of concern, that we can't target the non-stocks of concern in areas where there are no stocks of concern. Long story short, we're excited about it. I'm going to talk about that right off the hop in the beginning of the report. Now, what's the saying? He giveth and taketh away. Well, it looks as though we might all have to wear life jackets at all times when we're in boats that are under 9 meters. So you guys that have mega yachts, you're going to be okay. We're going to talk about that as well because there's a survey looking at if pleasure boaters should have to wear life jackets. They have some options where they're looking at age restrictions all the way up to a blanket where everybody's got to wear a life jacket at all times in a canoe. We're going to talk about that as well because it's a little bit interesting. It may be a little less stressful than are we allowed to fish or are we not allowed to fish, but it is one that we should all take note of, and there is a survey that goes along with that as well that you might want to tune in on if you have an opinion one way or the other. Other big news, our jam session. What is our jam session? Well, a number of years ago, well, many now, I want to say like 13 or 14 years ago, we got in our heads that we should do a steelhead jam session before the steelhead season. This was mostly just for us, the steelhead guides, to load up their boxes, and heck, if any friends or customers wanted to come in and hang out with us while we did it, that was cool. It grew, it grew, it grew. And if you guys and girls remember, before the pandemic, we could hold a steelhead jam session and have 60 to 80 people hanging out at the store, feature tires, cool techniques, cool materials, gift bags, giveaways, lots of fun stuff. It's a really cool event. We've switched gears now, however, because we want to really focus on lake fishing. We are holding a lake tires jam session. Now, how it works, it's free, but you do have to sign up because we have had too many people sometimes show up to these things, and there's 2 options when you sign up. You can either come in to tie, where you bring your own vise, you follow along with some of the experts, or heck, you tie something cool and we take a look at it. That's the idea of the jam session. Or you can just be a participant, come in, watch, learn some stuff, hang out, shoot the, so to say, and we have a beer sponsor. Big shout out to Red Truck Brewery. We're really excited about them being able to supply a few beverages for the evening. Links in the description where to sign up. Again, it is completely free, but we do need to know how many are coming, and it is limited, so make sure you get signed up. Down in the description below, there'll be a link and with more details there. All right, we are going to talk about the weather and fishing because the last time I tuned in with everybody, the weatherman totally threw me under a bus. Well, we won't throw him under the bus too badly. We know how hard of a job it is for every day to call the right weather. But we literally had trips that had to be changed. We had a video shoot that was canceled because of the nasty weather that was coming, and then that storm never materialized at all. The rivers didn't move, they stayed low and clear. A bunch of folks went out fishing because they were hoping for better water conditions, aka more water, which is a really key thing in this time of year, and it didn't happen. We're gonna go over what the weatherman says this time, and we're crossing our fingers that he's going to make up for his blunders of previous weeks and give us a window of what's coming down the pike, because we need some warmth and we need some rain, and that's really gonna kick off our spring fisheries. We're at that cool time of year where it's almost spring, and you know, I've got bulbs poking out in the yard out in the back, and that's usually your cue for looking at some different fisheries. We're gonna talk about that in the middle of the report. As always, you want to see more fishing reports like this, consider hitting the like button, hit the subscribe button. Let's get into it. All right, everybody, thanks for tuning in this Friday. Cheers to Friday, and cheers to this beer. The guy who dropped this off, you know who you are. I really appreciate this. I've got a few friends, family, and clients that come into the store and have cool beers that are related to fishing. And this I'm going to show up close because that's one of the coolest pieces of fish art. And I hadn't heard of these guys, Slackwater Brew. They're from, I want to say, Penticton. Let's see here, Penticton, BC. And I was looking at their website after I saw this because it's a beautiful piece of art. And it's also in technically my favorite style of beer, which is an amber ale. And we're going to see if it tastes any good. It could be garbage. I have no clue. But I'm excited. I like that a lot. I love an amber ale. It's just a little bit darker. It's not too hoppy, but it's got some flavor. That's right up my alley. And thank you for dropping it off. You know who you are. But we're not here to get my beer reviews. We're here to talk about fishing. So let's get into that. And let's start off with the politics in fishing right now, because there's maybe some good news. And so first, what's going on? Well, as most of you know, if you watch this channel, we've had major restrictions that have dramatically affected saltwater angling for Chinook salmon to the tune of absolutely decimating small communities that rely on these fisheries. Many people have lost their jobs or moved out of the sector because of it. And it also has trickled down into a number of freshwater managements where, though we haven't seen too many restrictions come down, DFO has moved to have the ability to shut down certain fisheries with much less notice and much less consultation than they would have had to in the past. And so anyway, for the last 5 years, since the regulations changed for saltwater Chinook fishing, we have been advocating for a marked selective fishery. What does that mean? Well, in its simple nutshell, there's hatchery fish out of there. Some, a very small percentage, have their adipose fin clipped off when they're at the hatchery so they can be identified. Twofold, we would like to see that clipping increase dramatically, as well as an opportunity to target those fish, not wild fish, when it comes to our saltwater areas where there are no stocks of concern. How do they get this data? It's extremely complicated. I can send you guys and point you in the direction of numerous studies, third-party studies not done by anglers, where they've looked at the genetics of the fish that we're catching, of commercial anglers are catching, as well as the First Nations targeting them in different areas, and what the genetic makeup is so we can protect stocks of concern and focus on stocks of abundance. Again, long story short, we've been begging for this. There are many areas throughout British Columbia where we could very easily target marked fish and have zero impact on stocks of concern. It has taken a while, but it looks as though they might be starting to implement some pilot programs in certain areas that have been affected very heavily by closures, where they think a marked selective fishery allowance to keep hatchery clipped Chinook will not affect stocks of concern. And so what does that mean? I'm just going to again read it verbatim because I hate putting words to this and getting it wrong. But the SFI is pleased to note that DFO has provided MSF, Marked Selective Fishery, proposals in the SFAB, Sports Fishing Advisory Board, and other groups for consideration and feedback. That's where you guys come in. We need to give our feedback that this is a good thing. It's not enough, but it is a good thing, and it's a move in the right direction. I'm going to leave links down below of where you can look at the data for yourself. For Chinook retention in areas that currently have non-retention in place from April 1st to either July 15th or August 1st. We're not sure on that. There's different proposals that we have to look at. Time and area proposals being considered have been through a rigorous evaluation process with DFO. Each have been proven to have a low to no impact on Fraser River and local stocks of concern. It is our understanding that DFO will provide an implementation decision for proposed pilot fisheries before April 1st. So the important thing here is I want all saltwater anglers, and heck, all people that love fishing in British Columbia should tune in on this, to click on the link down in the description and get educated on what's going on in the given areas. You're going to see opportunities. You're going to see actual questions when it comes to whether these should be opened or closed. So that's the good news. We're excited. We're hoping that will move forward. Everything sounds like it will, and then it'll just be a matter of how successful these pilot programs are in the upcoming years to hopefully expand those areas so we can have access to more marked fish that we don't want contributing to the genetic pool when it comes to spawning. Now, another one I did want to talk about, and it comes to do with the southern resident killer whales. Had some good input from folks. A couple folks actually tuned in and said, hey, Matt, I think you're off base. I think you need to look at the data a little more carefully. And I want to say this straight up. I'm not a scientist. I don't have time to read hundreds of pages. I read, 20 or 30 pages a week to try to keep me educated on what's going on in this industry. But I am not a biologist that has time to do more than that. And they were asking me and said, hey, I need to take a look at this. And I'm going to probably do a video on it a little bit later where we go into what's actually happening to the southern resident killer whales, because sometimes you might hear me bitch and complain about what's happening to the anglers, what's happening to the economic impact, what's happening to family, friends, and how it's affecting the sport I love. But having a clear picture of what's happening to the whales is probably also important because they are facing some major challenges. The takeaway there is that things are looking more positive for the whales, and my stance on that still will be that I think we've done enough right now, and we need to understand if what we've done is actually having an impact. The hard part is that it's a very emotional decision for everybody. People have livelihoods, people love whales, and when we get that into the mix on a creature that is as long-lived as us and a population that is as small as 70 to 80 animals, it's very hard to know if what has been done is working or not. And it would be very easy to do something that actually might be harming or might be helping and have no clue for a dozen or so years. Long story short, we're hopeful that things are turning in the right direction when it comes to DFO taking a hard look at the stuff that they've done and analyzing it to see if it's been beneficial. Lastly, we're really excited about this marked selective fishery because we don't think it will hurt the whales or take food off their plate, so to say, and it'll definitely help our world, our industry, and our love of the sport. All right, rant over. Now let's get to the bad news. You're gonna have to wear a life jacket. I kid, but that is what it looks like there is some proposals for. I'm gonna read this one verbatim too. Criteria for mandatory wear of PFDs or life jackets was developed by Transport Canada with the Canada Safety Boating Council in 2021. The analysis and recommendations were based on analysis from data on recreational boating related incidents in Canada and feedback received from stakeholders and the public over many years. The findings have resulted in the development of a following recommendation to be considered. And so I'm not going to read this to you because it's boring as heck, but basically they're considering everything from as simply as making it law that anyone under the age of 14 needs to be wearing a life jacket at all times in a pleasure craft, or 18 years, that could be one that they put in a pleasure craft, and then or with some vessel size requirements when it comes to the size. So there's one recommendation for any craft under 6 meters that is powered. There's one for under 9 meters that's powered. So you guys that have mega yachts, I think you'll be okay. You won't have to wear a life jacket on your mega yacht, but for pretty much everybody else who has a boat under 6 or 9 meters, they're proposing that we might have to wear life jackets, or our kids or our older teenagers might have to legally when they're on board. Another one even recommends that it might be human-powered vessels as well, i.e. canoes, kayaks. There is a way for us to provide some feedback, so if you're interested, if you are worried that you might not want to wear a life jacket, I know there's certain areas that I certainly don't want one, nor do I think it is a safety concern. I can make that risk assessment for myself, and I really don't want anyone mandating me to do it. On the other hand, we have to be safe, and there might be some areas there that might be beneficial. I'm not sure. But anyway, links down in the description below the more important one, which is the Chinook marked selective fishery, but below that I'll have links if you want to give your input on what you think might work when it comes to the new PFD regulations. All right, that was a lot of boring stuff. Good news, but boring stuff. Let's jump into the fishing now, because we've got some weather, as always, and I don't even know if I should be trusting it. The weatherman, as I joked, threw me under the bus 2 weeks ago when we reported a big storm coming in, and then that storm didn't materialize at all. I think there was actually a period of nice sunny blue skies with very little wind. So we were all scratching our heads, and what the rivers, at least on the river fisheries, had needed was rain. And what the saltwater fisheries didn't need was rain. So ironically, if you went out river fishing, you probably didn't have the conditions you wanted. And if you'd canceled your saltwater trip because you thought it was going to be pouring and gross, well, that didn't turn out either. Long story short is I think we're going to trust it this week. A broken clock is right twice a day. But here we go. We've got rain coming, and I am looking at Chilliwack right now because a lot of folks are heading out that way for steelighting, and it continues to be good. We've got a nice rain over the weekend. Nothing heavy, nothing I expect to move the river too hard, but sort of 3 to 10 to 15 millimeters spread over Friday, Saturday, and Sunday. Clearing up Monday with a pretty nice day on Monday of 7 degrees. Nighttime temperatures are getting a little cool into next week again with those clear skies, and we might see some snow again next week. Flip it out to Squamish. Well, we've got a dump as I'm doing this Thursday. That's coming down, and we're not sure whether it's going to be a mix of snow or rain. So we might have to keep our eyes on the upper road just in case. Friday, as you guys are watching this, should be beautiful if the weatherman's got his game on. And then we do have a mix of rain and or snow Saturday and Sunday, but not a lot of precipitation and fairly darn cold temperatures of highs of 4 and lows of sort of 0 and -1. That's going to mean the river's not going to move. If this is what happens, expect low and clear conditions and challenging conditions. We want to look at the 14-day trend, and this is something I started doing for both Chilliwack as well as Squamish this time of year. And this is important because when we see a warming trend, it's really going to kick off a number of fisheries. What are those? Well, it's going to start fry hatching. When you talk to the folks in multiple hatcheries right now, they've already had some in alvin stage as well as some in free swimming stage. That means in ideal temperatures, they're pulling groundwater, so that groundwater is going to be warmer than our river water. But that means the fry are close, at least where they are in the spawning habitats. When it comes to Squamish, when it comes to Harrison, when it comes to Chilliwack, when they start popping and swimming around, we're going to see the cutthroat fishery really kick off. We're going to see bull trout really wake up from their winter slumbers and become much more active. And it's also usually the time that steelhead fishing picks up just because of where it is in the bell curve in the migration, either be it on the sea to sky direction or up the valley. And so we're watching for that. The bad news is it's not coming on this 14-day trend. Looks like we're going to get a pretty nasty cold spell over the next little bit where it drops down as scarily as -12 or 15 on the 23rd and 24th. My hope is that after that cold spell, sort of next week and the week after, we'll see that warming trend. And hopefully by early March, we're going to see that first sort of indication of spring, and then the spring fisheries will really kick off. So there's the lay of the land here. I'd get out fishing this weekend because it's going to stay fairly normal for this weekend and then really dip next week. So yeah, get out fishing. Know that it's going to be clear conditions in most areas. Pick your gear appropriately. All right. That is everything I've got for you. I hope everyone can get out for the jam session. That is on the 28th of February. If I've got that wrong, I'm going to write it right here because I can't ever remember dates. Come on down, have a beer, hang out. Make sure you sign up. There are links down below to actually get a ticket, even though it's free. So make sure you check that out. And as always, you want to see more fishing reports like this, consider hitting the like button, hit the subscribe button. I'll catch you in 2 weeks.